Hello and welcome to Marathon Swim Stories, where we explore the human side of the superhuman feats of endurance swimmers and those who support them. I'm marathon swimmer and coach Shannon Keegan. In today's episode, Marty McMahon recounts his 36-year history of marathon swimming, including all of the things that can go wrong and have for him. While Marty jokes that his life peaked in 1985 when his 22-year-old self received a hero's welcome home after completing the English Channel, I think there's a lot more in store for Marty. I hope you enjoy this episode. Tell me your story, Marty.
So it's funny. I was thinking about where to start, and I'm going to start kind of in the middle and then go back.
Sure.
So I'm in England. It's 1985. And I'm invited to a garden party, a very British garden party. I think they did it annually at the time at Ray and Audrey Scott's house. And so all the dignitaries are there. And I end up in a small circle with some real veterans, including Michael Reed. And Michael Reed's like, "So you're here to swim the channel?" I'm like, "Yes." And he goes, "So what other swims have you done?" And I said, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "Well, like, what else have you done?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, have you swum around Manhattan?" I go like, "No." He goes, "Have you done Boston Light?" And I said, "No." And he said, "How about Chesapeake Bay?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Well, what swims have you done?" And I showed up in England and I had never swum an open water swim, not even a 1 miler. Now, when I say that, I mean, I trained, but I had never done an organized open water swim. So my first organized open water swim was English Channel.
And it was what year again? Remind me.
1985.
85. Okay.
So then to go kind of back, I was a swimmer as a kid, swam in high school, and I planned on swimming in college. And I don't know, I'm going to bring up something that's kind of odd or interesting, but it is a motivator. So I'm going into my last swim meet as an 18-year-old, the state championships.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty much in the final heat of almost every event I'd ever would do, but I'd never won like a state championship. And it was 100 fly, and I got touched out at the end. Now, this is where I'm going to kind of bare my soul a little bit. I actually was out till 2:30 in the morning drinking the night before as an 18-year-old high school kid. And so I always kind of, I kind of regretted that. I believe I could have won that race if I hadn't done that. So then I picked my colleges based on, having a swim team. I get to Villanova, where I ended up going. It's the first day of school, and I get my schedule. And I go down to meet the coach who I've never talked to or met. And I explained to him that on Thursdays, I'm not going to be able to make practice because I'm a physics major and we have a lab. And it wasn't a good meeting. He basically told me I had to switch majors. He was kind of not a friendly guy. So I walked away kind of unhappy. And that night I went just to swim laps at their pool and ended up swimming with a guy who ended up being my best college friend and roommate, who was also there to swim for Villanova. And also had a bad experience talking to the coach. And all of a sudden the captain of the water polo team came up and talked to us while we were swimming that night. And we both decided not to swim, which is just insane because it's the whole reason I went to the school.
Mm-hmm.
So I played water polo at Nova Division I. So that was fun. So then here's the second part. Well, actually, I want to say that it's junior year, spring of junior year, and I meet Tom Popdan, who is a recent Villanova grad who just swam the channel. Him and another guy named Rob, I can't say his last name, K, had done it right after graduating. Okay. And I looked at this Tom, and we were like almost identical in physique. And I'm like, well, if he could do it, I could do it. Went home that spring, mentioned to my family, it's something I'd like to put on my bucket list. So then as that semester came to a close, my junior year, at Villanova, water polo was first, fraternity was second, and studies were third. And drinking was involved with water polo and fraternity. I became academically ineligible to play water polo my senior year.
Oh, no.
Which was, real ego kind of embarrassing kind of situation. So I showed up at Thanksgiving, my senior year, on Thanksgiving break, and told my mother I wanted to swim the English Channel that next summer. And so that's where I focused my energies.
What was the response from your family when you said you want to swim the English Channel?
I don't want to go too much into it, but my mom was widowed at 49 with 6 kids, and she was just a really tough lady and very adventurous. So when I said that, she was like, "What do we need to do?" I mean,
Wow.
she was like, she became my
Fantastic.
manager. She started reaching out to the Channel Swimming Association, and I spent my senior year studying harder and swimming a lot.
Yeah.
So I swam through senior year, swam the next summer, getting ready to go to England.
Not
So
open water though, just in the pool.
mostly in the pool. But then when the summer came, Hammonasset is the Connecticut shore. I swam a lot there, and I swam the Rhode Island shore. But there was nobody else I knew that had done it. I ended up having lunch with a Maura Fitzpatrick, I think her name is. She had gone to Smith College and she had done it. So I went up to Smith, met with her and her coach, got some feedback. And here's how weird it was back then, pre-internet. So I put $20 bill in an envelope and I send it to Penny Lee Dean in California, who then sent you back a 15-page mimeographed, stapled piece of paper with how to swim the English Channel. And that was my guide. And then all the interaction with the CSA was all through, snail mail. It was crazy. So I got to England and, I have the same kind of story as a lot of folks. Though I got there and I was so naive that I knew that you swam at Shakespeare Beach. So my first 3 days there, I was training at Shakespeare Beach, and there was people fishing off the shore. So I went way the heck out to avoid the fishermen. And then like the third night there, it's kind of funny because you had her the other day. I went to a restaurant with my family and I met Susan Hine Bowen, who I don't know how we made the connection. We're swimmers. Maybe we just look like American swimmers, but and I just said something about what I was doing. And she's like, "Oh my God, are you crazy? Everybody's training in the harbor." And so here I was by myself for 3 days. I go in the harbor and it's like a party. There was a Japanese relay team. There was there was a lot of folks. People were actually doing sets in the harbor, and
wow.
So I had a grand old time, with them. And someone explained to me that I was really lucky because at Shakespeare Beach, if I was out as far as I was, I could have literally been swept by the current and been gone. Wow. So I was in England for, again, and I don't hold it against them totally, but I had one bad day, meaning weather-wise, so I couldn't do it. And then the next day that I should have done it, I had Mike Orm as my pilot. I just lost his name, the Australian triple crown or triple length swimmer who runs the New Zealand swim. He bumped me because he was going for a triple.
Oh, okay.
So I was in England for 18 days before I got a chance to swim.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. My whole family was there, 5 siblings and my mom. They all had to go home.
Oh my gosh.
So I had no crew. So Ray Scott, who's the grandson of Audrey Scott, happened to come in from Maryland, and he was my crew. As far as the channel swim itself, I mean, it's just high points. And I was thinking about this talk, and, things that could go wrong is kind of a theme with me, I think. Had a good first part of the swam for 4 hours. Mike used to have it that you swim for 2 hours, took a feeding, and then every hour after that. And it was literally lemon and dextrose in a styrofoam cup. He'd hand it down to you. The environment be damned, you drank the thing and you threw it over your shoulder and kept going.
Wow.
Those days are gone. Thank goodness. And so at hour 4, he was giving my feeding, and he literally said to me, "Why didn't you tell me you were such a fast swimmer?" And the thing is, I didn't know I was a fast swimmer. I'd really never done one of these before. So I was more than halfway across in 4 hours. I was on a really good pace.
Wow.
But then weather came in really bad, force 5 winds, 6 to 10 foot swells. So I guess my kind of funniest story is in that swim is at and he supposedly doesn't remember this, but it's in my Channel Observer notes. Mike Orm, it's climbed over the railing of his boat. He's got his cup to hand me. The boat's tossing back and forth. And sure enough, a 10-foot railing of the boat snaps off. And Mike Orm, the pilot, falls into the water with my feed in a styrofoam cup. And again, I must have been doing okay because he didn't spill a drop of it. And he hands it to me, and I'm like, "Mike, you didn't have to come in. I was okay." And so, you know how you're told not to look at the French coast because it's an optical illusion. You'll swim
Always is.
for
Yeah.
3 hours and feel like you got nowhere. So I had not looked at all. So it's now at hour 10 and he's gotten up on the boat. So I was like, for 15 minutes, I just had to tread water while he got settled. They pulled the railing back on the boat. And he said, he looked at me, he goes, "You can look now," because he knew I wasn't looking. And actually, it was a mistake
Oh no.
because I looked and Cape Grenade was right there. I'm like, I got 15 more minutes and I'm done.
Yeah.
And, an hour and 15 minutes later, I came up onto the shores of Wisconsin. So like a lot of
Wow.
people, I missed the Cape and ended up on Wisconsin. So
How did that feel after putting, what was it, about a year and a half, 2 years
it was great. I mean, the moon was really low over the French coast. So I literally swam in on a moonbeam. He warned me to that it was going to be cold outside and to don't stay out of the water long. It's like, what are you talking about? I just swam across this channel. I'm going to celebrate. And I remember I climbed out of the water and I kind of literally went like this, and every muscle in my body just cramped up. So I grabbed about 10 stones from the beach, shoved them up my suit, and swam back. But yeah, for a 22-year-old, it was so new that I flew into Logan Airport, and the local CBS affiliate in Hartford, Connecticut, flew a helicopter out, picked me up at Logan, flew me to my high school football field where the whole town was there. And it was Martin McMahon Day in Windsor.
Wow.
And so it was pretty heady stuff for a 22-year-old. I always say my life crested at 22. It's been downhill ever since. So then after that, I swam some of those smaller swims I had never done. And then when I was 4 years later, I swam around Manhattan. So story number 2 of things that can go wrong. It was a year where they had about 39 swimmers. 15 of them were from King's Academy, I think it is. It's like a military school. And so the boaters were, kind of hinky as far as where they got all their boaters. So my wife, sister, and a friend are on the boat, and I'm now swim around most of the island. I'm in the Hudson. I'm coming down the Hudson. My 2 pilots have been drinking beers the whole time. And a part of their deal is I think they made like $300 and free gas. Well, they wanted to get going right after the swim. So they basically said, we're going to go get our gas now. And they left me in the middle of the Hudson River swimming by myself.
Oh my gosh.
Which my wife was not happy about. And the weird thing is, you guys gotta understand, is that mentally I was okay with it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm
Okay.
swimming, I'm all right. I don't need anybody. And so, but it took a while for them to come back, like over an hour by the time they found me. But this is when they found me. So I'm swimming down by the boat launches down by the Intrepid, and the Bermuda Star ocean liner starts to pull out of its berth, and it's not stopping for anybody.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm within 50 feet of an ocean liner with the current about to slam me into the side of it.
Oh wow.
And the race director's boat comes flying up. It's like a 40-foot boat. And they're screaming at me, I either got to get out, like onto the boat, or I could turn around and sprint up the Hudson as hard as I can to avoid this ocean liner. So that's what I do. I swim for 15, 20 minutes as hard as I can in the wrong direction, which pissed me off because I had been holding off. I mean, it is kind of a race. It's not a race, and it is a race.
Yeah.
And I've been holding off 3 swimmers for, 7.5 hours. And now I just sprinted back to them. And then the ocean liner gets out of our way and they just cruise by me, and I'm exhausted. But
No.
but I swear, I love that swim. I know you asked a question about like favorite swims. I mean, to me, the English Channel is the most iconic one, so that's got to be my favorite, or at least most proud of. But swimming around Manhattan, especially for someone that breathes to their left, it's just a fantastic swim because you have all the sights. You swim best. At the time, the Twin Towers, Empire State Building, the UN, on and on, all around the island. So there's so much to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then my third kind of what can go wrong story is a swim that you're familiar with is, I did the Border Buster a couple of years
That was
ago.
more recently.
Yeah, right before COVID. And my wife was going to be my kayaker. And so I came up with this great idea to put a milk carton on the front of my kayak and have all my feeds in that. Well, I'm not an engineer, but I forgot about center of gravity. So I put all this weight really high on the kayak. And, and they told you about how you couldn't land in France because, you'd have to have your passport or all that stuff. So my wife and I, she's been on my boat for a few of these swims. We have a good routine. So when she would feed me, I would take the feed and I'd start swimming again. And she'd write some notes about my stroke count in her little pad. And then she would, take her own feed or whatever. And I'd expect about 5 minutes after a feed, I'd see her kind of come back up next to me and we'd continue on. So we're on the Canadian side. We're a good ways in, about halfway in, before you kind of make the turn to come around.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see a buoy out in the distance I'm shooting for. And all of a sudden, like 5-10 minutes have gone by and I'm like, she's not coming up on my side. And I'm kind of, what's going on? So for a really scary moment, I turn around and look for her and I can't find her. And I do a full 360 and my wife is nowhere to be seen. I'm like, what's going on?
Public monster got her.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it had gotten pretty choppy and windy, and with the weight being distributed wrong, she flipped over the kayak.
Oh,
and
man.
because just with the waves, the reason I couldn't see her is just she was so low to the water and
right.
Hundreds of yards behind me. And you've been to the swim, so she had a working she had a flag and a one of those horns
Air
from
horn,
soccer games. And she couldn't get either to work, but another kayaker saw her and they called. So the other part, what could go wrong? So they got her, they put her on the pontoon boat, they right sized, they got all the water out of her kayak, they took my superstructure off of it. She had saved most of my feeds, luckily. But the problem is she lost our brand new $150 paddle. And so the only thing they had on the pontoon boat was literally this like dinghy paddle. It was like this like 3-foot wooden paddle. They gave her that and they said they were going to try to get a paddle out to her. So for the next hour, it was like Hawaii 5-0, the introduction, because I'm swimming and my wife's got this little paddle and she's doing the Hawaiian 5-0 thing on her kayak, like working so much harder than me. I'm like, oh my God, she's killing herself. I guess one of the good things about it, to be quite honest, is I ended up, while I was waiting, they said you could go ahead with another swimmer.
Mm.
So I hooked up with this other swimmer who was slower than me, but he had passed me because of this weight. Mm-hmm. And because I swam with him for a better part of an hour, he told me after the swim that he and his brother was his kayaker, said he was going to quit because mentally he was in a bad place. Right. Yeah. Just the fact that I swam with him for an hour was that kind of companion thing that got him going again. And then the last part of that, I guess, is just funny, is I don't know if you ever had this, but you pull into the finish, and this was, it was a race, and it's not a race again. So I swim up and I'm in, waist deep water, and I just want to kind of kneel for a minute, get my bearings, and my wife is like cramping up, dying in the kayak. And all of a sudden she just goes, "Will you finish? I can't get out of the water till you're done." So I'm like, okay, I'll climb out. So I've had some neat experiences in this. So.
Yeah. So tell me the difference between, like maybe training wise, between English Channel and then Manhattan a few years later.
So Manhattan, I think I knew a little bit more about what I needed to do, but then both of them, I feel I trained, sufficiently. But again, I was a lone swimmer at that time for both of those swims. I did all my training myself. I didn't know almost anybody that had done any of this. Mm-hmm. Marcy McDonald in 1990. So, I talked about having lunch with the folks at the girls from Smith. In 1992, Marcy McDonald called me up and had lunch with me and picked my brain about what it was like to swim the channel. And then she went and did it. But now you may or may not be familiar, but like in 2000, Sports Illustrated had Connecticut as the English Channel swimming capital of the world. And it really was because of Marcy and Liz Fry, because they just have the personalities that if you have even an inkling that you can do this, they can size you up and go, yeah, you could do this. And Hammonasset State Park in Connecticut's a 2-mile long stretch of beach that, on every Saturday and Sunday, you can do a 4-mile loop with. Right now, literally, you can go down there and you could be on a particular day swimming with 8 English Channel swimmers. So wow. For someone that's aspiring, it's pretty cool. Jim Bayless, and George Hounahan, and there's a bunch of us. So, but yeah, Manhattan was a cool swim. I would highly suggest that, and I would highly suggest doing that before you go do the channel. Like ramp up. I heard Lori Kang's presentation, and she's really the way you should do this, and keep expanding the distances until you build up.
Yeah. So what happened between Manhattan and Border Buster a couple of years ago?
So, he's a wonderful, wonderful kid. I have a son who's got Asperger's. It's like a high form of autism. Mm-hmm. So and he was between him and his sister, life was busy for
Yeah.
20 years. He's doing great. He's working on masters at Simmons, but he still lives with us. And so, for 20 years, I had to focus on family. So every once I did Chesapeake Bay a bunch of times. I would do smaller swims, did a bunch of did a couple marathons and did some running because that's just easier. As you know, you don't have to get to a pool and all that.
Right.
And then I started around 46. I think I started kind of getting excited again. Liz Fry wanted me to do, which I did, the swim across the Sound.
Oh, great.
Which is a great, 16-mile swim. And that kind of got me going again. And then I discovered the Northwest Kingdom. And so I'm scheduled to do In Search of Memphis. It should have been this year, but with COVID, that got pushed off a year.
Right.
And I guess the other weird thing, so in 2012, I had a failed attempt at Catalina.
Oh, okay.
A couple things. One, I learned don't eat chicken marsala at 7:00 the night of the swim, and then take a really nasty boat ride over to Catalina. The whole crew was seasick, including the observer who had never been seasick and had done like 50 of these.
Oh, wow.
So I climbed into the water seasick, and I just never got better. I swam for 3.5 hours, couldn't keep any feeds down, cramped up brutally, and called it a day. So I'm going back. I was supposed to possibly go back last year, but I have a scheduled date, COVID, if COVID lets me, in August of this year. And I don't call this a record, I call it a factoid. If I'm successful this summer, I'll break the quote unquote air quotes record of the longest time it ever took someone to do the Triple Crown. And it's kind of funny because the record's held by Kevin Murphy, and then recently tied by Susan Hine Bowen last summer. But she did her channel swim the same year I did.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun. And I don't know if Susan would appreciate this, but and I don't even know what the record is, but I know there's people that do the Triple Crown like all in one season, and people are trying to do it in the shortest period of time. And I'm like, what's the big deal about that? You got in shape once, and then you just stayed in shape for 3 months. I mean,
exactly.
Try to do this for 36 years.
Right.
And John will tell you it's getting harder and harder. I do a training swim now, and I have to come home and take a nap.
Yeah. I was just trying to think. The question floated through my mind and disappeared. But so tell me a little bit more about. You talked a few things. So you talked a little bit about cramping, and I've heard that like commonly, and especially in maybe I want to say men, maybe more than women. What do you do to help alleviate or work through cramping?
I don't know if I have that skill yet. It scares me because that was the first time it really ever happened to me at that level. I cramped on the Border Buster because just again with that whole scenario with my wife getting capsized, we basically ran out of like fluids and feeds. With a couple hours left, she literally, I remember, handed me one feed and I started to guzzle it down. She goes, no.
Last one.
Only drink half of that. And then at like hour, like it took 9.5. It would have probably taken closer to 8.5 if all this hadn't happened. But at like hour 8 or 8.5, she offered me chicken. Want some chicken? Because that's all she had left on the boat. But so I think it's just trying to stay hydrated. And hindsight's 2020. I've kicked around my Catalina swim, and with my wife, whether I should have called it or not. She really almost doesn't think I should have called it. She thinks I should have shortened my feeds and kept at it. And I've talked to Ned Dennison about it, and I probably should have. So if it was to happen again, it's like take your swim in 15-minute increments.
Yeah.
Do breaststroke. I mean, do whatever you need to do to. Your body will usually right size itself again or whatever. It'll right itself. But I didn't have the mental readiness to handle that at the time. And I think I do now.
Yeah. There's something to that too.
I know Ned swum with wicked cramps. One of my favorite things is hearing was when Liz Fry couldn't keep her feet down. She says, a lot of people go 8 hours without drinking or eating. So why can't you do 8 hours of a swim without eating or drinking? It's a fascinating thought, but
exactly.
I hope it doesn't happen to me. But
right. Yeah. No, but it is amazing what people do when they put their mind to it.
Right.
I was on Elaine's boat when she did Tahoe 2016, and she couldn't keep anything down till like we were almost like a mile or two from the finish, and it was really interesting to just, she'd try to do water, whatever, but it was
Right.
just interesting like to actually witness that as being a person on the boat. It was a good experience for me to know like, yeah,
Right.
like
Right.
feeding is not optional, but it's ideal. How about that?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to going back to Catalina because I did experience the photo. How do you say it? Photo.
Oh,
The algae. The algae.
Yeah.
And it wasn't what I expected. I thought it was going to be like this green luminous stuff, but no, it's like sparklers coming off your
Yeah,
fingertips.
it's super sparkly. Yeah,
And,
it's great.
I loved it. I can't wait to try. Hopefully it'll happen again.
Yeah. That'll be fun. So this year you're hoping for the cert in what month?
No, search will be next year.
22.
I'm kind of a one big swimmer a year. So
Yeah.
Catalina's in August, and I'm booked to go hopefully to Cork Distance Week, for 2 weeks in July. I did that 2 summers ago, and that was wonderful. And as far as getting you mentally prepared, I mean, the first day you're swimming 2-hour sessions I was doing 8 miles a day. That's funny too. I get to there and, it's 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night. I could swim 2 miles an hour. So I did 4 miles in the morning, 4 miles a night for the first 3 days. And I was watching a lot of the vets and they were kind of knocking off after a lap or two. And, cause it's a mile a lap. And then I found out because, they do this, 9-mile champion of champions type race on like the 3rd or 4th day. And they were all sandbagging, waiting for that. And I just looked at it like all of it, including that 9-mile day was just training, so.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully if COVID will let us travel.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I've heard just such great things about Cork Distance Week. It seems like such an amazing opportunity.
This is such a funny sport too, because at my local Y just last week, a lifeguard says to me, "Hey, in the afternoon, there's a guy here training for Manhattan." I go, "Really?" Because again, you don't find these people around. So I reached out through the Y to find the guy, and it turns out this guy named Michael Mayer, who swam the channel 3 times and around Manhattan once, and we're in the same Y and we don't even know it.
That's amazing.
And he's kind of a maniac as far as his work ethic. And so on last Friday, I'd been, because of COVID, I've been up to maybe 4,500 yards is the most I had done. And he's like, he got a 7,000 straight and like going all out. So on Friday, I did that with him. I almost killed myself because I hadn't done that yet, but yeah. So it's great. It's a great sport, great community.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you got to talk to those lifeguards, see who else is might be at your pool.
Right. And and then I'm always fascinated. I'm usually kind of top third as far as speed. I am like blown away by the people that aren't fast and do these swims and are in the water for just hours and hours and hours. I think it was Bill Rogers who talked about the fact that the famous runner that, he couldn't fathom doing a 5-hour marathon. He's like, I couldn't fathom running for 5 hours. And I look at the people that do these channels and take 15, 16, 18 hours. And I just give them kudos to be able to just stay at it that long.
Yeah, there's a different level of love of that. I think that's what I'm kind of realizing more I talk to people is like there's the people that just want to get it done as fast as they can and they're training as hard as they can. And then there's the people that they're in it just for the experience and they're going to savor every bit of it. And it is hugely admirable. So. Very cool. What about like your technique? Has anything changed in how many years are we talking here since 85 in your technique?
Well, it's gotten a little better recently. I think I actually got water polo stroke for a while there with the hands facing out. And I did a little bit of like the total immersion, trying to really, lengthen my stroke and pause it more and not be just, grinding through. I have a really slow stroke count. I'm always fascinated by, especially Australians. They always seem to have like 75 strokes per minute. And, when I did the channel, my high was 62 and my low was 58, so I'm not moving that fast, but I have a decent amount of pull. I don't kick at all on the long swims. Just kind of have this philosophy that, that's not kicking's not efficient. So why do it?
Yeah. It's exhausting.
I have a light 2-beat kick. I watched a video of Susan Knight swimming across the North Channel, and she's got like a 6-beat kick. And I was like, oh my God, did you do that the whole time? And she's like, yeah, that's my stroke. I can't fathom that.
Yeah. I know.
This year also, I'm working on this is almost a laziness over a bunch of years. I want to build a bilateral breathe again.
Yeah.
So I've just been breathing to one side, and I have to go see a chiropractor because sometimes I can't turn my head to one side.
Yeah.
So I've really worked on the bilateral, and I think that can help actually during tough situations, like if there's wind and they want to put you on the other side of your kayak.
Yes.
All of a sudden you got to breathe to the wrong side. So I've been really working at it.
That's
recently.
a good idea for sure.
Yeah. And in winter I mostly doing a lot of sets in the pool, but now right around now I knew I had to start just putting my head down and mentally start swimming long periods without picking my head up, because I know I'll get to the lake for the first time and I want to pick up my head every 200 yards because that's what I've been doing all winter.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like establishing the fact you got to keep your head down and just go.
Yeah, just keep going. Yeah, that's good.
And and I've read a little bit of your original blog, and being older, and I kind of agree with you. I don't feel like I have to do 7,000 yards a day like that Mike. 5,000 kind of is what I'll be shooting for. And then
a day.
Yeah, I do 5,000. And then I'll do one long swim a week. I do subscribe to that. Just that, and I call it LSD, long slow distance. I don't care how long it takes me. Just stay in the water for multiple hours. And I ramp that up. I'll do 6 miles one week, then 7, then 8, then 9. And then about 2 weeks before the big event, I'll taper it down. But that's kind of my training regime. And now, like I said, early on, I was all solo. Now I get to go down to Hammonasset and swim with Marcy and Liz. And they're, oh my God, you guys know that. I mean, they're fast. When they want to be, they can just cruise forever. And so I find I'm on the upper ends of my limits, just trying to stay with them. But I try to, because it's just good training.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Fun to have people to train with like that. It's awesome.
Yeah.
What about, is there anything that you've learned about yourself through your marathon swimming?
Oh, I think I've used it in life a lot. Being goal-oriented, putting your eye on a goal, naming it, and then knowing what work you need to do to have it happen, knowing that you're going to have hurdles along the way. Things aren't always going to go your way. So I think it's given me a resilience. My company has done whole seminars on resilience, and I think it just kind of comes natural to our sport that you just become good at that. Like even COVID, I think, it's bothered a lot of people more than it has me. And I just take it in stride that this is, the reality, and we'll get through it. But so I think it's really resilience.
Yeah.
It's also teamwork. It's also teamwork. I was cocky when I was 22, and I literally did, my swim was a little faster than the other Villanova guy. And I'm embarrassed to say this, but I saw him like a year later, and I kind of was like, yeah, my time was faster than yours. And then I came to quickly realize, like, someone was just saying in one of your recent ones, is that, nobody gets the same day on these events.
Yeah.
So you can't compare unless you have a head-to-head race, you just can't compare. And then even it gets one, like, who cares?
Right.
I really am to the point now. I just want to get to the other side and walk up onto land, so swimming with others and appreciation of your crew. I've had, wonderful people on my boat that have kept me going. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. What about, so when you were 22, I mean, was there ever any point that you were just like, oh, this is unbearable? Or like, did the wanting to quit, did you ever have to fight through any of that kind of emotional stuff?
Yeah. And it's funny, like I said, my longest training swim, that's kind of a funny story. So I was supposed to do 2 long training swims in prep for the channel in my head. I had a 10 miler and a 15 miler. The 15 miler never happened because I got a flu bug and didn't end up doing it. So the longest training swim I did was 10 miles, but it was the local orthodontist in town had a boat. So we went down the Connecticut shore, and we mapped out this thing out from Groton Long Point out to around Fisher's Island. And so I haven't, he's not an experienced swimming pilot. He's a orthodontist with a boat. And we didn't look at the news. So I swam my 10-mile swim in Long Island Sound the day they retired the Nautilus submarine. So the Nautilus submarine is coming in for its farewell cruise into the Groton sub base.
Wow.
And every pleasure boat on Long Island Sound was out to see this. This is not good when you're trying to swim out there because people are flying. And so when you're swimming along and you see an orthodontist jumping up and down like a madman, waving at boats to try to wave them away from you. It's a little nerve wracking. Was that the question? What was the question?
Well, I just was trying to get to the well, even just like as a new swimmer or new.
Oh yeah. So
like just the mental aspect of it.
So the longest swim I did was that 10 mile. I can't remember, but at the time I used to swim 2 3/4 miles an hour. So I probably, did that in, 4.5 hours, something like that. So when I got to the channel, like I said, I was halfway across in 4 hours. So I was swimming fine. And the rough waters didn't really start happening until hour 6, 7, 8. But at hour 5, I stopped and I literally looked up at the boat. I said, I can't do this. And my little wonderful English observer, Molly Gill, says, you're doing fine. Keep going. I put my head down. I'll never forget. I mean, I swam like 10 more strokes and I stopped. I lift my goggles up. I'm like, no, I can't do this. I'm done. And Mike Oram, who I guess in the time was in his 30s with this humongous like fisherman's beard, opened up a porthole of his boat, stuck it out and said, you're doing fine, keep going. And it is just amazing how, just an English, boat captain, he just has so much clout that hit just those words. And I'm like, okay, put my head down and continue on. Really never had another mental problem again. But and then, later on found out that marathon runners or whoever, I guess there's there's the wall. That I guess usually happens somewhere around 5 hours where your body's using up different stores of fluid, whatever.
Yeah.
So I probably hit the wall. But that was the one time I didn't think I was going to make it. Even with, by the way, when it got really rough, it was more like rollers. I don't know about you guys. I find, a 2-foot chop going down the Hudson River way harder than a huge rollers. Rollers are fun. You're going up and you're going down. I don't like being on the boat for that because the boat's corkscrewing, but in the water, I'm fine with it. So I was enjoying that. So I didn't mind that at all.
Yeah. Did your just thinking back to your mom and your siblings all being there in the beginning, did they ever get to help support you or crew for you or anything after that?
So good story. I don't know if you know Tim Johnson. He's an old person in sport. He actually was not a swimmer. He did the navigation and the timing of the Manhattan Swim for years. So he was a boater who knew when the tides and when you should go, because if you swim around Manhattan the wrong time, you're not going to make it.
Right. Yep.
So he decided to have a swim go across Long Island Sound from the point of Long Island to Rhode Island in '93, and I attempted that. And I've had 2 do not finishes in or actually 3, but 2 of my own problems. And one was Catalina and one was this 93 swim across Long Island Sound. And what I have in common, which is kind of fascinating, in both those swims, 3 weeks before the swim, I was in car accidents where the car was totaled.
Oh my God.
And so one of the reasons I think I didn't make Catalina is I was having vertigo because I think I still had loose crystals in my ear.
Oh, jeez.
And I didn't make it across Long Island Sound in '93 for the same reason.
Wow.
My car was totaled. I found out after the swim that I had some bleeding in my lungs, so I shouldn't have been in the water.
Oh my
God. The reason I bring that up is I did a solo that day. My wife and family, which is kind of cool, did a 6-person relay. So my 4 siblings, my wife and her brother did a relay across Long Island Sound. I always wanted I have 6 siblings that all swam. I wanted to do a channel swim relay, but they weren't up for it. But anyway, so my crew for that swim, and again, I think I might have been able to make that swim if I had the right crew. My crew was my mother. And I was like 30 something years old with a young family. And, when I got out of the water, she's like, I'm glad you got out. You shouldn't be doing this. You're too old. You have a family. This is too dangerous. She was not the right person to have, not your mom. Like she sees you struggling and she's like, oh, honey, come on out. So, but for the channel swim, they got to, like I said, a helicopter flew me back to town. It was the lead story on every news station in Connecticut. And the night I did it, my mom's, the phone call from me from England is, I have tapes of all this really cool footage of, I guess it was a really slow summer for the news. So they got to really enjoy it. And
that's fun. That's back when it was a novelty to complete the English channel.
That's right. Well, I think was it, I was the guy that kind of keeps all the records on the channel. If I recall, was like 2018 or so. There was a couple of years back. I think there was like 150 successful swims, and when I swam it, there had only been 270 in history.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? And now there's like 100 people could do it one summer.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I get it. I mean, I think it's training. I mean, it's, the fact that you can go on the internet and get books and videos and everything you need. There's the world's gotten smaller and to be quite honest, I think wealthier. More and more people have the financial ability to go do this than back then.
The ones that do.
And then the baby boomers, I think, staying healthy and staying active. And so, I find fascinating about our sport is I think the average age is probably 42 instead of 22.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's when people are starting to their kids are starting to get a little older and have more free time and they have the financial resources to do some of this stuff. And
Yeah, and it's, I mean, like you'd said, it's an iconic swim, so it's a hard one to just be like, I won't do that one. I mean, it's hard to do, as John knows, and like just trying to get there, get the window, logistically, booking years out, but it's still an iconic swim.
Right, I mean, if you think about it, like I was saying, I mean, basically there was no qualifying. When I went, I had never swam in an open water swim.
That's crazy.
And I went to swimming with channel. Now, again, I'm not putting down the race committee at the time. That was just the way it was back then. Now I think the whole sport has become much more safety conscious.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The year I swam around Manhattan, like I said, I was an hour and a half by myself. There was a guy named Chris Green from England who literally he was a head case. He got in a fight with his pilot, and his pilot left him halfway through the swim. And Chris Green swam the rest of the 28 miles, 14 miles of the swim with no pilot boat, swimming from boat to boat, begging for feeds. and it was allowed. Wow. It wasn't like some race director came flying over and said, "Oh no, we got to pull you. You don't have a boat." I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember the gentleman who got left by his kayaker out in the middle of the Sea of Galilee. I mean,
Stuart Hacker. Yeah.
And that's fascinating. And one of the things I learned even just 2 summers ago, I was doing a 9-hour swim just in my local lake, which is 3 miles around, but I was doing it early May and I'd lost a bunch of weight and I wanted to get a 9-mile swim in the water. I think it was like 51. And at the far end of the lake from my stuff and the car, I went hypothermic. I had to get out. And luckily it was kind of a sunny day. They got me out and they put me up on a dock and I was doing the thing like you're a kid, like trying to keep moving onto the warm spot. But it really struck me that because I had my sister in a kayak, a kayaker does you absolutely no good if you're in trouble. Let's face it. A kayaker is great for feeds and maybe hang on to the boat, but they could not have gotten me the length of that lake back to my stuff and the warm clothes and the cars. So luckily, this lake has tons of houses and I climbed out and the people who lived in the house helped me out, put me in their car and drove me back. But it really strike me that if you're going to do a training swim lake that's long and, you really almost have to have a power boat, at least, on call.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Good safety point. How's the pandemic been for you? You mentioned your resilience has helped you get through, but
well, last summer, I just swam a ton in the lake and, if I stay acclimated, I can swim down into like 51, 52 degree water for 2 miles pretty, successfully. I don't like it. People are like, "Oh, you're the guy that likes the cold water." No, I don't like it. I don't mind swimming in warm water. It's just that I can do it. Yeah. So I was able to swim right into November at my local lake. And I, for years and years, also was a wetsuit snob. Like you never wear a wetsuit. I was at a race once in the 80s and I literally saw this conversation between an 80-year-old swimmer and a 70-year-old swimmer. The 70-year-old had a wetsuit on, the 80-year-old didn't. And the 80-year-old said to the 70-year-old, "Why are you wearing a wetsuit?" And he goes, "Well, it's because the water's cold." And the 80-year-old looks at the guy and he goes, what's the initials for wetsuit? And the guy goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "What are the initials?" And he goes, "WS." And the 80-year-old goes, "Sound that out." It's wuss. And it just struck me that this 80-year-old guy, is telling a 70-year-old guy that wearing a wetsuit's wussy. Now, I've totally changed my thinking because I come to realize that there's a lot of people out there that just don't have the body fat or the ability to do this sport unless they can wear a wetsuit. And I think they should wear one then. And No, but for the most part, I've really never, worn one. Matter of fact, I did the Casco Bay swim run, which is 5 miles of swimming and 20 miles of running. And I think Elaine tried that in Kelly the year before I did it. And I had the same problem as them. Yeah, the water is like 55 degrees, but it's like 75 degrees outside and you got to run in a wetsuit. So I'm looking at the race director going, you're afraid of people dying of hypothermia. How about hypothermia? You got this old fat guy that's going to pass out in this wetsuit running. I have no problem swimming in this stuff.
Right. Yeah. Oh man, I just got to write down my questions when they come to me, because there was something you said and I was like, what motivates you to keep going?
Staying active. There's not that there's no ego.
Stay active without swimming marathons, though. Why do you keep swimming marathons?
There's all this thought out here that you should you shouldn't be working on your ego. Really, you should try to avoid your ego. But we all have egos, and I have an ego. And what really bothers me is when I talk about my swimming and someone goes, "Well, what are you doing next?" Or "Do you have anything else planned?" And it's like weird. Like if I don't have anything else planned, I feel a little bit like a failure. Like, no, I got to have another adventure. And and again, a lot of folks that I know don't do this stuff, and I swear to God, they kind of live vicariously through some of us that do, and they get excited about it. And for like the Swim Across the Sound is a fundraiser. I send 200 letters out to my clients and say I'm doing this fundraiser and this big swim, and they're totally excited about it. They want to know how the swim went, and so I think there's always just having. I've said in the past that, and this is a bad thing to say, but I find just regular life boring. I don't think I could just work 9 to 5, come home, have my beer. I love my dad to death, but that was his life, have a beer, watch Charlie's Angels, whatever, and go to bed, and I do a little bowling, maybe a little golf, but I need to have adventure in my life. And this is what does it for me. And I have done some running and type adventures and cycling type adventures. But as my body's, to be blunt, breaking down, my knees are kind of going. I have a bad back. I've always had a bad back, which you could swim with, but so I think a lot of that's going by the wayside, and really I'll be able to just swim the rest of my life. But as you know, you can swim the rest of your life.
Exactly. You can.
And you keep having people in the sport that are 10 years older than you and keeping at it. A friend of mine, Doug Comstock here in Connecticut, attempted the channel a couple of years ago at age, I think he was 62. Now, again, I feel bad for Doug. He didn't make it. He got pulled a mile from shore.
Oh.
So he's kind of bummed about it. I'm like, Doug, you swam 13 and a half hours. I've never swam 13 and a half hours, but I keep saying to Doug, because he keeps aspiring to do this stuff. I'm like, every year you do one of these, that's mean one more year I'm going to have to do it. So you got to stop one of these days. So I know when I get to stop. You too, John Gale, you got to stop.
Yeah, the
65 yesterday.
There you go.
Happy birthday.
And actually, what saved me about COVID too is for the past 10 years, I've done on my birthday at the pool, I've done an IM for every year I'm alive. So on my 50th, I did it on my 50th birthday. I had 50 100 IMs. And so this year I was going to have to do 58 100 IMs, and COVID wouldn't let me. So I was like, oh, good.
I was trying to swim a mile for every year I was, my 45th year, I swam of 21 miles and then 25 miles, which was 46. But anyway,
there you go.
Won't go into that. What advice would you give to an aspiring marathon swimmer?
Well, again, do your research. Do the Lori King approach, and break it down, do it over a bunch of years and enjoy it. I've even seen this said about triathlons. I've read stuff about, at one point I thought I wanted to do a full Ironman, and people go and try to do a full Ironman all at once. So why would you do that? Get into the sport, do some smaller triathlons, then go it. And I would say that about swimming too. Immerse yourself in the community. Find your pod. And I have my Connecticut pod now, and I'm, I did my ice mile up in Boston, so I feel like kind of an honorary Boston pod person. And then, up in Vermont, that's such a great crew up there. So I think that's a big piece of it, is find people. And then, I'd never done it till 2 years ago, but these swim camps, like doing and I know you want to do one. Cork Distance Week was fabulous. I mean, to meet 50 swimmers from all around the world that I'm now on Facebook with. And by the way, I'll say this, because of politics, I really wanted to get off Facebook in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But it's the swimming community.
It's our swimming community. I know. I don't know how else to have it without Facebook.
I've unfriended tons of people, but I don't unfriend any of the swimmers,
Yeah.
Because that's the conduit to all of them. So
exactly. Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. What marathon swimmers inspired you?
Well, it's funny again, when back in the channel days, no one. Because I didn't know anybody. Now, I mean, Marcy McDonald and Liz Fry really just, they just keep going, and I think they inspire me a lot. I was around when Marcy had her first failed double, and I had heard through the grapevine she was kind of bummed about it. I wrote her a letter and I said, "You realize that you made it one length of the English Channel, which was my life's dream. That was your failure, was my life's dream. So let's put this in perspective." Yeah. But yeah, folks like that, that just keep at it. And it doesn't, like we said, it doesn't have to be the faster ones. It's just the ones that keep at the swims. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing community. It's funny to me, like how that's just the theme throughout all this is like everybody just loves the community, and it's so exciting to be able to.
Well, I'll be reaching out to you for In Search. I'm going to get all the lowdown on that swim.
Yeah. Have Charlotte be your crew, man. She was outstanding.
Well, I'm excited if you have Charlotte. I am sorry about some of the food items you get.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. The sad part is that I didn't actually have my feeds like dialed in. Everyone talks about having your feeds dialed in. I'm not a dialed in kind of girl.
I'm not either. Matter of fact, Catalina requires you to have a feed plan that you actually give to them. And which I get. I'll give them one, but I don't know if I'll stick with it.
Exactly. Give them a feed plan and then bring an extra bag of snacks.
And I kind of still, and I'm working on this, because a lot, like Ned Dennis and a lot of folks really feel you should be taking a feed every half hour. But if I'm having stomach issues, when I did the channel every hour, and when I do my training in my lake, I do 2-mile loops, which take me an hour.
Right.
So I'm feeding every hour.
Right.
So I don't know if I'm going to feed more than once an hour. We'll see.
To each their own.
That's right.
Thank you so much for reaching out and for sharing your story, Marty. It's so wonderful.
It's been my pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed today's interview. Do you want to take Marathon Swim Stories with you? Subscribe on your favorite podcast provider. Want to connect with like-minded limit pushers? Join us for Marathon Swim Stories live on Tuesdays at 5:30 a.m. Pacific, 8:30 Eastern, 13:30 GMT. Thanks for watching.